Colosseum, also known as the Flavian Amphitheater, was and still is the largest amphitheater in the world. This huge amphitheater is 50 meters high and 156 meters wide. Colosseum was built with 1.1 million tons of concrete, stones, and bricks under the watch of Emperor Vespasian in 70 to 72 AD and completed under his heir Titus in 80 AD. There are 80 arches that allow the 87,000 people that were able to sit there enter and exit. The Colosseum also once was covered with a controllable velarium that shielded the spectators from the sun. Most amphitheaters were built in a circle, but the Flavian Amphitheater was built in an oval shape so that more people could see the events. The arena was a wooden floor covered by sand. The sand was used to dry up the blood and sweat that would land on the ground. Spectators would sit in seats determined by the citizens' importance. The hypogeum under the arena was used to hold wild animals imported from Africa and the Middle East. Slaves also fought in the Colosseum. The hypogeum could also create different moving scenarios. The arena hosted different blood sports for the spectators. They included men hunting deadly animals, criminals being executed, and the main event, the gladiatorial combats. Before the hypogeum was created, there were even mock naval battles in the Colosseum. All of these bloody shows ended in the 6th century AD, when costs became too high and the public taste had shifted. Today, the Colosseum is a symbol of Rome and one of the most visited sites in the world. The Florence Cathedral is one of the most magnificent buildings in the world. Also known as the Santa Maria de' Fiori, the Florence Cathedral is 114 meters high and has one remarkable part, the dome. The person who built this remarkable dome was Filippo Brunelleschi. He was challenged to build this magnificent dome. Back then, domes were usually built in a semicircle, but the town fathers required that Brunelleschi build an 8-sided dome that would be taller and stronger. The dome had no central support system to hold it up, and the base was an imprecise octagon with no true center. But Brunelleschi had it all covered. There would be 2 domes that were held together by giant brick arches and interlocking rings of stone and wood. Brunelleschi even designed massive lifting machines far ahead of their time to help him move materials up to the dome. The way Brunelleschi laid the bricks was also very interesting. Because the dome had no central support system, Brunelleschi laid the bricks in an herringbone pattern, with vertical bricks acting as bookends to hold the others in place. In all, it took 16 years to finish this magnificent dome. Even today, it remains one of the largest masonry domes in the world. The Statue of David is a 17-foot-tall marble statue created by Michelangelo. Michelangelo created this statue to depict the boy David who slew the giant Philistine Goliath. Started in 1501, this marble statue was intended to be placed on top of Florence's Grand Cathedral along with 11 other Old Testament heroes. But when it was finished in 1504, the plans for the other statues had fallen through, and people realized that it was too hard to lift the marble statue onto the cathedral. Michelangelo created the Statue of David very lifelike. He even added bulging veins in David's right arm. So, it seemed a shame to hide the statue so far from the viewer. A council of politicians and artists decided to place the statue in front of the Palazzo della Signoria. The statue stayed there until 1873, when it was moved to the Galleria dell'Accademia. It is still there today. There is also a copy of the statue still in front of the Palazzo della Signoria. Even today, this statue is still visited by people around the world. St. Peter's Basilica is the largest church in the world. This basilica has a 218-meter-long nave and the world's largest dome, measuring 42 meters in diameter and reaching 183 meters into the sky. St. Peter's Basilica has been the center of the Catholic faith and is regarded as one of the most holiest Christian sites in the world. It was built to replace Old St. Peter's Basilica from the 4th century AD. When Pope Nicholas V saw that Old St. Peter's Basilica's walls were leaning far out and the frescoes were covered in dust, he decided to build the present basilica. There is an Egyptian obelisk flanked by 2 fountains in the square outside of the basilica. There are also 140 statues on the colonnades around St. Peter's Square. They represent Christian saints. The words on the front of the basilica says, Paul V Borghese, Roman Supreme Pontiff in the year 1612 and the 7th of his pontificate, erected in the honor of the Prince of Apostles. You can also see Michelangelo's famous Pieta in the basilica. Even today, people rate St. Peter's Basilica as one of the most beautiful buildings ever made. The Milan Cathedral, also known as the Duomo di Milano, was built in 1386. It is one of the largest Gothic cathedrals in the world and one of the largest Catholic churches in the world. It has more statues than any building in the world. It has 3,400 statues, 135 gargoyles, and 700 figures. There are also more than 100 marble spires. It took a few centuries to finish this magnificent building. There is actually another basilica underneath the cathedral. It was dedicated to Saint Ambrose and was built in the beginning of the 5th century. There were more than 300 workers working on the cathedral, and by 1402, almost half of the structure stood completed. But after this point, construction stalled for 80 years due to the lack of ideas and money. Fortunately, construction started again in the 16th and 17th century. During that time, many of the internal decorations were added. The last details were finished in the 20th century. You can find many sarcophagi of the archbishops who have once served this cathedral. Even though this cathedral took a long time to finish, the finished cathedral's beauty can make up for that. The Sagrada Familia is one of the many pieces designed by Gaudí. Started in March 1882, this building is still not finished. It is scheduled to be finished in 2026, 100 years after Gaudí was hit by a car. Once completed, it will have 18 towers. 12 of them will represent the apostles. 4 of them will represent the evangelists. 1 will be designated for Virgin Mary, and the last one, the highest one in the middle, will represent Jesus Christ. Once it is finished, the basilica will be 172 meters tall. The project was stopped during the Spanish Civil War and continued on slowly after the war. On the wall facing east, there is a carving of the birth of Jesus. And on the wall facing west, there is the carving of the crucifixion of Jesus. On the side with the crucifixion of Jesus, there is a Jesus tied to a pole. The 3 steps leading to the pole represent the 3 days it takes for Jesus to resurrect. Even though the Sagrada Familia is still not finished, it is magnificent. Park Güell is one of the most magnificent parks in the world. It was intended to be a gated community for Barcelona's aristocracy. But because the clients replied so poorly, only 2 of the 60 houses were built. So, Gaudí decided to move into one of the houses with his families. Gaudí lived there until he died, and during his lifetime, he created a lot of memorabilia and furniture. The park remained a private garden for the Güell family until 1920. The family then handed the park over to the municipality, which turned it into a public park. Today, you can see the work of Gaudí all throughout the park. There is a famous mosaic dragon greeting you at the entrance. There is also a famous chair that represents a sea serpent. As you walk throughout the park, you can see that Gaudí blended his architectural skills with nature. That is why Park Güell is so amazing. Thank you guys for watching this YouTube video. This is actually my first YouTube video I ever created. So please like and subscribe, and yeah.